everyone. Welcome to the Set Point Podcast, the channel that talks about volleyball, leadership, team building, and much more. My name is Cesar Benacci, and I'm here with my brother, Peter Bristocci. How are you, brother?
What up, Cesar? Hello, everyone. Ready to take notes here. Eyes and ears open. Let's talk volleyball and a lot more.
All right. And today we have a very, very special guest, the guy that I look up for, and I've learned so much throughout these years here in the United States. So with no further ado, welcome to the show, Jason Watson. Welcome, Jason.
I appreciate that. You guys are doing a nice job here with your podcast. I know when you had G on, I listened and learned a ton. So hopefully I can kind of pay it forward here.
Awesome. And we're we're 100% sure that we're going to have a lot of lessons. So make sure you get your notes on, get your pencil, pen, and paper, and be ready to take a lot of notes because today we're going to have a lot of things to learn. So I'm going to start here doing a little introduction about Jason. Jason is from Australia, the beautiful land of Australia, and he has a big history here in the United States as a player and as a coach. So he started as a player at BYU, played for the legendary Carl McGown, and then after he graduated, he started as an assistant coach at BYU and had some other schools that he worked at as an assistant coach, such as Kansas State, Arkansas State, Montana State, and then had beautiful times as a head coach at BYU, Arizona State, and now at Arkansas, right? Yeah. Jason, did I forget something?
No, you know how it goes, right? You move and you move and you move in this profession. And it's not a negative, right? It's just the profession in general, so yeah, that seems like a lot of places when you mention it like that. I know, because it is, right? It is a lot of places.
Yeah, no, and it's a lot of experience. And when I mentioned that you played at BYU, just tell us how did you get to BYU, and how was playing for Carl McGown such a big icon of our sport here?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't know Carl McGowan, he passed away a couple of years ago. But you're sure, if you've been in the sport long enough, being influenced by him, even if you don't know it.
For sure.
And so in 1990, the Australian Institute of Sport started a full-time volleyball program, which was pretty unheard of at that point in time, a centralized national team training thing that was kind of year-round. And I think they did that in anticipation of getting the Olympic Games in 96, of course. Atlanta got the 96 games, and then Sydney got the 2000 games. And I was fortunate to be one of the first enrollees in that national team program, but a full-time training program. It was in my hometown, actually. So I think that's why I got invited, right? I was in my hometown, but I was young, and these guys were old, and I looked up to them, and they were good, and so I was kind of buried on the depth chart a little bit, as should be the case. So I was looking for an opportunity to, better my cause there, if you will. And so looked to come to the United States and had a couple of options, but BYU being the cheapest of those options, that was the thing. There's not much scholarship money in men's volleyball. So off I went to BYU, not knowing, of course, at the time how impactful that decision was going to be on the rest of my life. Playing for McGowan, meeting lifelong friends. I played at BYU with Hugh McCutcheon and Kevin Hambley and Chris McGowan and Scott Larkin and Pat Sinclair. Ethan Watts was the first Olympian that BYU produced, and so and it's produced some coaches, and even more so now Mike Wall, Sean Olmstead. And I'm sure there's coaches that I've forgotten,
Carlos Moreno.
Yeah, Carlos Moreno. Yeah, there you go. And so all of us have been influenced either directly or indirectly through our association with BYU with Carl McGowan. So and so then I didn't know what to do with my life, right? And And so I got into coaching, and one of these days I'll figure out what I want to do with my life. But until then, I'm going to keep coaching. And so, yeah.
No, and we're fortunate enough to have you in our profession and being one of the references for us. And so when you got there as a player, of course, you went through 4 years with him. Your team, from as far as I know, your team got much better throughout the years. When you started, I remember my first coaching clinic was with you, Carl, and Chris. I was very lucky to have my first GMS coaching clinic with you guys, and you guys always talked about how bad you were in the beginning, and you got way better throughout the years. And you as a player now transition to the coaching world. What did you learn about all these years that you played with Carl, with all these guys that are volleyball geniuses? And what did you take to the beginning of your coaching career?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I was part of those BYU teams that were terrible. We were horrible, actually. My freshman year, we won 2 matches, and one of them was against the men's team from Montana that I think after they lost to us, just stopped playing, right? It was so bad. But through it all, my 4 years anyway, and then a number of years later, they won national championships, and those were Ozzie Antoinetti and Ryan Millar and Hector LeBron and those type of guys that won the championship. I thought practice was fun. Like, even if we weren't winning, like practice was this thing that you looked forward to each and every day because you got to do what it is that you loved. And of course, Carl, being Carl, was the preeminent, I think, catalyst towards this, hey, let's go get good at playing volleyball by playing volleyball, and I'd never experienced that before. I'd come from this heavily drill orientated, and hey, if you did a good job, you got to play volleyball at the end of practice. But it was a complete kind of 180 than what I'd been used to. And it was just a joy, and losing was hard, right? I mean, we have all experienced losing at some capacity, and it was hard, but practices were these wonderful things. And through that, we kind of got better and better and better and better. And as did Carl too. I think he would even admit, that he got better as a coach because he got to coach. And so when I made this transition from being a player to being a coach, I think the trap that I made was that I wanted to coach like Carl, which is not a bad thing to do, right? If you want to coach like someone, coached by like Carl. But I wasn't Carl. He had this unique personality and his unique way in which to speak that I probably shouldn't have and couldn't emulate. And so it took me a while to find out my own personality, my own way of coaching that was probably true to me. And that took a long time because I was so heavily influenced by Carl in that space. And I think most BYU guys of the time were, like Carl would have this thing, I'm kind of thinking that we got to be a little bit better at this kind of stuff. And everybody would take on those mannerisms. And I'm sure to this day, right, like, if you've been around people who played and coach alongside Carl, there are these mannerisms that come back, right, that are just so prevalent in our conversation. But yeah, trying to find, your way as a coach after being heavily influenced by somebody that's just phenomenal in that space. That was hard for me for a while. Like, that was really hard.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that you say that everybody that went through, like, got some time, spent some time with Carl, have something of him. Like, I see something of him in you, and Chris, of course, it's his son. But with G, oh, sorry, my light went off here. Give me just a moment. I don't know what happened here. I'll fix later. But G, you can see something in Giovanna of him. There's a lot of people that got influenced by him. that it's so awesome. So awesome to see someone that had such an impact in the volleyball world. Just the legacy keeps
Yeah.
moving on because of all the people that went through his path. Peter, take over. I'll fix my thing here.
All right. Jason, so once again, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here with us. So you were talking about that challenge, right? You were not Carl. You tried to emulate him, and then you try to find yourself, like, who am I as a coach? So that raises a question for me. So that might have been a challenge for you. And so what were, or did you have any other challenges from transitioning from being an athlete to a coach? What were the greatest challenges you had in the beginning? And I'll take a risk here, and then I'll take my chances and say that Carl might have been a great reference and influence for you as a coach. And did you have anybody else who could you could say that they were references for you as a coach?
Yeah, so my first college job, I went to Bozeman, Montana, and I was working at Montana State University for a coach by the name of Dave Gant. And Dave had spent some time with Carl because he had spent some time in the USA arena as an assistant coach. He had ties to a coach by the name of Bill Neville, and had some ties to John Cook, who was involved in that program when it was based in San Diego, sort of thing. And so I thought that was a really pivotal moment to help in that transition, because Dave had been in the women's college game, and my first job was in the women's college volleyball. So I had no reference point on what any of it was, right? I just knew playing men's volleyball and what that entailed, and watching women's volleyball at BYU. And of course, women's volleyball at BYU was really good. And so, but I had no idea of conferences and you know, tournaments and all of these kinds of things. So Dave was this wonderful mentor to help me bridge that gap between being a player and getting into coaching, you know, and coaching isn't just coaching, right? I mean, coaching is recruiting and scheduling and film and scouting and administrative work and things of those nature. And, you know, creating a systems manual, an operations manual, and the way we're going to go about doing all of those things. I mean, I had no experience in that realm, and Dave was phenomenal in that way. And so that was a pivotal moment for me. I think that eased the transition there, because I think he was really patient with me as I tried to find a better way in which to help those athletes, rather than just, you know, why can't you do that, right? That just, like, what, you know, like, I just got done playing, I can do that, so therefore you should do it, right? And we forget, right, that the pace of the learner is the pace of the learner, and the, you know, limited ability to process information and all that kind of stuff. So that helped me immensely, be able to, you know, hey, yeah, there's a lot more to this than just, you know, I mean, I coach in the summer doing some GMS clinics, you know, and you go into a school for 4 days, and after 4 days you leave, but you don't ever see the fruits of that, or the struggles that come with coaching a season, you know, that and he was wonderful in that space for me, you know, like really, really good. And so much so that he was my assistant here 2 seasons ago, right? He was just, yeah, and it was just such a great time working with him again.
Some good people come back to your life, people that you were assistant before and now come back as your assistant. That's so cool to see that. And Susie, right?
Yeah.
Can't have the same path. So
yeah, Susie Fritz, who I was her assistant 23 years ago or something like that, you know, when she first got the K-State job. I mean, we were both assistants at K-State under Jim McLaughlin, which was a phenomenal learning environment as well. But and then when he moved to Washington, Sue's got the K-State job, and I stayed to be her assistant. And that it was a great experience. And then she came on staff here last season, and it was phenomenal. Like,
and you guys had the season that you had, right? So
yeah. And you know, I think, you know, I don't think lonely is the right word, but I think being a head coach is a little lonely at times. Not because you're like no one wants to talk to you, but you're making these decisions and you have to own those decisions, you know, and that's the lonely part of it. But Sue's helped shoulder a lot of that, like an enormous amount of it, because she'd been there before, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same situation that we have here at LMU. So I was a head coach for 7 years in Bakersfield. So I came here under John, and it's a different process of decision making. It's different because I've been in a head coaching position, and I know the struggle that the head coach goes through sometimes, and having someone by yourself that have been on these shoes for so many years and in such a high level is so important and so beneficial for sure.
Yeah, I would be curious if you felt like you would be, having been a head coach, are you a better assistant now than you were before you had head coaching experience?
I would say yes. Yes,
Yeah.
because now I relate to the struggles and the challenges that John has here. And even though it's a different environment with different kind of investment, it's some of the problems and some of the challenges are similar. And I can be way more proactive when I
Yeah.
have been in a head coaching position, knowing what it's needed. So I can kind of take a step forward ahead of time and see the problems coming, or see solutions, not necessarily problems, but see how we can solve that situation in a faster and easier way.
Yeah, that's funny because Sue shared with me she'd be on the job here for like a couple of weeks, and she said being an assistant at Arkansas was the easiest damn job she's had in 22 years, you know. And so I was just wondering if that was her or if that's just the way it go. Yeah, because you understand, right? The consequences of decisions and just how hard it is to make decisions, and
definitely, yeah, for sure,
and how they impact people. Yeah.
Well, the good people stick together, right? It's just like cycles. One day you're an assistant, the other day you're a coach, just gravitating toward each other. And that's so cool. That's very, very cool.
Yeah, I think getting to work alongside people that know you makes you it probably makes it easier for you to be you.
Right.
You know, and you're not feeling like you're constantly being judged by your staff, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
And so that's what I found, you know, as I progressed in this, you know, hiring people is just really, really important and really hard, and hiring people. I mean, you need some philosophical alignment, right? Like the way you're going to train and things like that. But you also want them to have some autonomy over, hey, can we do this? Can we do that? Can we do this sort of thing? And then be able to have some healthy discussions about that, but also allow each other to be themselves in that space. I mean, that makes for the best synergy of the staff.
Yeah, and even if we don't work together, we're always going to have each other's back, and we're always going to exchange ideas. Like I talked to Giovanna, I don't know, every day almost. When we're like not talking for 3-4 days, I was like, something is wrong, let me text her. So, and she does that with you. I know that she reaches out to you all the time.
Yeah.
And then you probably do that with other mentors, and it's a very good web of like people helping each other. It's great.
Yeah, there are no short conversations with Giovanna.
No short conversations.
There are no short conversations.
Well, we have a group, me, Giovanna, and Peter, and the conversations there are endless. But there's a lot of learning there.
I don't want to be in on that.
You don't want to do that? I was going to
don't.
add you on that group.
No,
okay.
please don't add me to that.
I'm not going to do that. No, I'm going to save you that trouble.
Yeah, please don't add me to that.
Okay, sounds good. Jason, we talked about GMS. So Gold Medal Squared is a big part of your life, right? What was the importance of Gold Medal Squared as an institution for your coaching career?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot out there, you know, and I think as we see the amount of information or the access to information that coaches have these days, you know, be it YouTube, be it Instagram, TikTok, or things like that. So there's if you want, right, you can spend hours online looking at all kinds of different things that are being pushed. You know, by different coaches. So it's wonderful, right? The access to information is just phenomenal. And we'll also say the access to the game is phenomenal now. Like there's more volleyball on TV than there's ever been before, and so that's great. But how do you sort through all of that stuff to figure out what it is that you want that is going to be impactful in your gym, right, with your athletes and your staff, and so I think the principles that GMS has been pretty consistent with over the years, certainly starting with Carl and then Chris and Mike and all of us that have had some influence by them and are helping them in some capacity. Have certainly helped me. Hey, yeah, okay, I understand that. No, there's no way I'm ever going to do that. And it's helped me able to make some decisions, and I know that perhaps the knock on GMS over the years has been that they've been incredibly dogmatic about the way they've done it. It's this way or not, right? And that's so unfair and so untrue, actually. I think the strength of GMS is their ability and willingness to ask questions and find out why. And not just settle for, hey, because, right? Like, because that's the way they do it, or because that's the way they do it. And so there's always, I think, this, hey, why? And if you have a really strong why, then you're going to move the needle. And that should be the case for all of us, I think. And so that's where I truly just am a big fan of what GMS is trying to do, is like, hey, we're asking lots of good questions and we're trying to find out good whys, and then we're willing to share that with people too, and so that's, yeah, I mean, that's what I think most of us are trying to do some, but we've got to have some guardrails around our philosophical, what we want to do in our gyms, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I am you way more than I am, but I have been influenced so much by Gold Medal Squared. When I got here was all I knew, actually. Oh, not all I knew, but all I was immersed in the Gold Medal Squared world, that I was like, man, this is amazing. And for a Brazilian that came with absolutely no structure in terms of like, how am I going to teach the game? What kind of principles, what kind of guidelines am I going to use to run my show there on the court, right? And I'm going to teach my athletes to do technical stuff, tactical stuff, statistics. There's a lot of like a system per se that it's in place, created by Gold Medal Squared, that it's always evolving.
Yeah.
Like every coaching clinic that I do with them, and I did my first one in 2009, every coaching clinic was so much better than the other. And I learned so much more throughout the years.
Yeah, and I mean, there's lots of people doing lots of amazing things in this space too. It's not, there's a lot of coaches that are doing that. They're evolving and perhaps, we don't know about it because they don't have the forum to share it. But there's a lot of good coaches in the country that are asking why, and trying to find some answers to some pretty interesting questions as the game evolves, right? The game is evolving, and it's exciting to see, especially this time of year, right? The Olympics, it's so prevalent on everyone's mind, and the game is evolving in a remarkable way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're recording this podcast on August 7th, and tomorrow we have the two women's semifinals. So going a little off script here, United States or Brazil? Trick question coming from a Brazilian.
Yeah, you're asking the Australian to make a decision between the US
carefully.
and Brazil, right? You're asking that. My schedule hasn't been great in the last couple of weeks, so I haven't been able to watch as much as I would like to. But it certainly seems from the start of the Olympics to now, the USA has just really kind of evened out some things, especially with their first ball contact, and that's allowed them to kind of get into a really nice side-out rhythm of some stuff. I haven't watched Brazil as much, but I mean, those matches, right? I mean, that's how many times have those two teams played each other in these pivotal moments? And so that's going to be interesting. I'm going to go with the Australian sand women's team. They're into the semifinals as well. Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
And they beat the Swiss yesterday, and so I'm excited for them. They're playing really quite well.
They're
actually.
good. They're doing great, and
But,
they knocked out Brazil the round before.
Yeah,
Swiss.
so I'm going to go with them.
Teams.
I'm going to go with them. And I have no idea what's going to happen.
Okay. All right. Well,
I mean, I thought the U.S. Poland game didn't go as anyone thought it was going to go, right?
No,
at all. And so
not at all.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what makes it fun, right? That's what makes it fun.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And by the time that this podcast is out, we're gonna have the Olympic champion that we don't know who it is.
We don't. Yeah.
It could be Brazil, United States, Italy, or Turkey. So
Yeah.
but I don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah. Cool. Peter.
That's a very interesting conversation. We could talk about the Olympics all day.
Yeah.
So, Jason, we've seen you, you do something that's incredible that's on your social media. You post your practice plan, right? And then that's awesome to see. There are a lot of very, very well structured and all that. And your team has had an incredible season. Like your last season was incredible. So congratulations on that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
So we see you working with, a new philosophy as well, which is, the ecological dynamic constraint-led approach. And so considering the beginning of your career and now what you're doing with that methodology, how do you think you evolved as a coach from the beginning of your career and now using more different methodologies? I mean, I'm not saying that we per se change absolutely everything that we do, but we learn new things. We put more tools in our tool belt for the sake of our team and their development. So how do you see that you implemented this new, which is not that new actually. It's new in volleyball maybe, but we see soccer doing that or football doing that in Europe for a long, long time. Different sport, but how do you see that has helped you training your team, and how do you see that other coaches could use that? But before you answer that, I guess if we go on a timeline, like how did you come across that methodology first?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just an evolution,
Right.
actually. Perhaps one of the things is if that that's kind of resonated with me, right? If I do the same thing that everyone else has done, then I'm probably not going to be any better than them, right? Like that's the way. So what is it that we can do that's different, that can give us kind of an edge, right? I mean, everyone's looking for an edge in that kind of space. And so that's been motivated, a little bit, and case in point for us, like most libs who set the second ball are going to bump set it and put it high, right, and give their hitters time and everything like that. And we want our libs to hand set everything that they can and hand set it with tempo, right? And so that gives us a little bit of an advantage, right? Like we're going to create a little bit of a seam in the block and things like that. So we're always looking for little things like that can kind of create this little advantage for us. And so in a training realm, a practice realm, then we're trying to do the exact same thing. So, and I think this idea of context has always kind of resonated in that, you're after transfer, right? You want to take what you want to transfer, but you're also after retention too. You're after both of those things. And in order to, and those things are hard to do, right? They're really hard to do. And the transfer is not one-to-one, right? It's some other figure, who knows what it is, but it's not high. It can be really low, but it can't be significantly high in some stuff. So And so context becomes this important thing for me. And so we want to train our athletes within the context of which the game is played on the weekends. Let's say we're playing on the weekend. So that's important, right? And I think early in my career that we would kind of do this deconstruct, reconstruct. And we would do that with mechanics. We would deconstruct them and then pull them back together, and we would probably do that in a little bit of a blocked environment and maybe even without some variability to it. And then we'd put it back together. And then we'd probably do the same thing with systems, right? We would deconstruct and reconstruct systems and things, and we would go through our practice doing that. And then at the end, we would get into some sixes and be able to go do some things. So, and so just, okay, can we do that a little better, right? Can we do that a little better? And then at the point we're asking that question, right, there was just this phenomenal amount of research that's coming out on Twitter and things well, Twitter was the forum that the research was being pushed to everybody. And it just was like, and most of it that I was reading is in, well, football, like soccer, and coming out of Europe, and then there was some stuff coming out of Australia in that space too, and I was like really intrigued by it, and so like, all right, let's go all in on this. Like, we can get your mechanics better, but we can do it also within the construct of the game, context of the game. We don't have to deconstruct it and put it back together. We can do it in that phase. And so now we're doing it in a phase that allows us to get some retention and some transfer sort of thing. And so that's been this wonderful evolution. And what we've, I think you got to let your athletes do what they love to do. And it turns out they should, right? Most of them.
Oh my God, I love
playing
that.
volleyball, right? They love playing volleyball.
Right.
And look, like lifting and running and conditioning is the tax you have to pay to get to play volleyball. But practice should be this environment that they just love coming to because they get to do what it is that they love. And so we do that. Now, along the way, right, we've got to get better at transition. We've got to get better at defending a left side. We've got to defend a right side. And this idea of trying to create practices where we're getting better at those things, but we aren't telling you directly what we're trying to get better at, because that has some bearing on how you're going to respond, right? And Rob Gray has this book, Move, and it's a phenomenal book, and whoever should get that. But the idea that we're coupling perception with action is huge in our sport, right? Like, what you see has a big bearing on how you respond, right? And so as we're moving along in this deconstruct, reconstruct skill phase, deconstructing it is all decoupled, right? It's never coupled with what you're going to go do, and so a traditional example, right, would be, hey, I'm going to put you on a box to go hit at a blocker that makes a block move. Right. And the blocker makes that move, right? I hit the ball into the blocker blocks it, and we're going to celebrate the fact that the blocker is getting better at blocking, but when we think about blocking and we think about that skill, which I think is a phenomenally difficult skill, what makes it difficult? Well, what makes it difficult is, the quality of the first pass, there's some decisions that need to be made there. What is the setter doing, mechanics wise and, trend wise, and then where is the set and what is the hitter doing? And all of those things are these perceptions that ultimately influence the action, sort of thing. And so you've just decoupled all of it. And now you're going to try and recouple that, but later on in your practice, it's really hard. It's really hard to do. And so let's not do that. Let's just put it all together at the beginning. And GMS has this idea, that, hey, one of the areas of our game, essentially, that we need to be better at is serve and pass, right? Serve and pass has to be better at, serve and pass has to be better at. And I've worried about serve and pass out of context, right? Like, you can serve and pass where I'm serving just to you and you're passing to a target, right? And so that's serve and pass. but there are all of these affordances, I think, that go in, like you have to pass next to somebody. The server could serve through a bunch of people. The server can serve from multiple spots. You know, there are people moving on the other side of the net. There are people moving on your side of the net. And you've got to work all of those things together to actually be good at serve receive, you know. And so that's, I think, the where we're trending with this is, I don't want to be good at passing. I want to be good at serve receive. And I think those two things are different. And so if you want to be good at serve receive, then you've got to put them in the context of serve receive. And I get it, you know, it's hard to get those reps and there's things, right? And I'm not saying that, hey, if you're having trouble with your wrist and hands together, I can't pull you to the side and give you a couple of reps, but then I'm going to throw you back into that sort of stuff. But that's where we're going with that sort of thing. And interestingly enough, you know, the 3 passes that we've had at Arkansas last year, this year's a completely different team, but last year, 3 of them individually were, I don't think, in the top 10, top 20 of passes in the country, you know, but collectively as a group, they were the 2nd best passing trio in the country. So what is it that you want, right? Do you want a good passer or do you want 3 good passes? Right. And so we'll see. I don't know.
Right.
Well, maybe we'll follow up in January and I'll be like, none of this worked, you know, but
I'm going to be there in 2 weeks to see that in person.
To witness that in person. So, Jason, I just want to say to all coaches listening or watching us, just go back these last 5 minutes, press the rewind button and listen to everything that Jason just said. And as a coach with a youth volleyball background, as a coach, what struck with me was stuck in my mind really is that your athletes go to your gym because they want to play volleyball. And we already know that playing volleyball is what makes you better at playing volleyball. That's the training, that's the specificity principle of sports training. So we want our players to get better at playing volleyball, they have to play volleyball. It's not an easy job for us coaches to structure practice and what do we want from the game. Otherwise, it's just going to be structured playing. But what do we really want from it? It requires a lot of effort and a lot of energy from the coaches to what am I going to manipulate, what I'm going to change, what are the constraints. But I will hand it over to Cesar now, but that is incredible. We need to play the game more, right? We need to play the game more.
And just on that note too, right? Like if you've got younger athletes, you know, that maybe playing the game is 3-on-3, maybe they're playing the game's 2-on-2, maybe they're playing the game is 4-on-4. It doesn't necessarily always have to look like 6s, you know.
Right.
And if you've got a young team that can't serve regularly, and then just get back there and throw a ball over to mimic the serve. You know, there's lots of ways that you can, you know, manipulate this a little bit to get it looking like the game, you know, and so it's not always about 6s. You know, it is for us, right? It is for us, but if I was coaching an 11s team or 10s team or something, then we'd probably be playing the game small group stuff, right? And stuff like that. So there's always that. But
and that maximizes touches, right? That maximizes touches on the ball. That's what they incredibly need.
Yeah.
But we're going to talk more about youth in a little bit. But Cesar.
Yeah. No, one thing that resonates to me is the idea of, and we've been saying that every episode, almost every episode here that we record, we say the fundamental of the game is just just good if it serves the game, right? If you do something in an isolated form, you're probably developing the statics of the fundamental, not the technique, because the technique is just as good as when it serves the game, when it's in context, like you said, right? So the example that you gave about your passers, your 3 passers that individually were not in the top 10 or 20 of the country, but as a collective, as the best line of pass in the country last year. And that took time to develop, right? It took a lot of a lot of hours training those relationships. We talked so much about the relationships, the chains. What's my relationship between the person next to me passing, blocking defense, my setter to the hitter, all of that. If we train that in a deconstructed way, like you said, it's going to be really, really hard to put it back together, right? And be effective.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. And you know, that's what we've found is that, you know, that these things are systems, you know, that you know, passing is not a system. Serve receive is a system, right? And then working together to communicate, maybe even front loading some information, right? Like preempting some of the things. I think sand volleyball has been doing this for years, right? Like sand volleyball is so far ahead. And I started the sand program at Arizona State, and I will be the first person to admit I am the single worst sand volleyball coach that has ever coached in college. Like
I completely disagree with that.
No,
but that's
I was terrible. I was terrible because all I wanted to do was put my indoor kids on the sand team so that we could play more volleyball. And I was terrible. I didn't know what I was doing. I don't know anything about sand volleyball, but I feel like the serve receive part, right, working together, they're just light years ahead of where we've gone in this thing. And I think like mechanics are mechanics, and you know, there are certainly optimal ways in which to pass, right? Like, hey, face the ball, angle your arms. There's optimal ways to hit, right? Hey, rotate around a central axis, and you know, hey, 4 steps, and you know, step close, slow to fast, and things like that. But I think at times our sport thinks that you have to master those fundamentals before you get to go play the game, and I just think that's just maybe just a waste of time, right? And so demotivating, right? That somehow my mechanics or how good you as the coach perceive my mechanics to be is the gateway to me getting to do what it is that I love. Like that. Beautiful. It just seems silly now.
Yeah, no, incredible. And you've already listened to you talking in all the podcasts that you record, and you always talk about how you like practice, how practice is your jam, and games is for the athletes, right? So that's really, really cool. So what's the structure, and how do you think about when you plan your practice, looking through the ecological constraint-led approach lenses? Like, do you use a lot of differential learning? Do you base on the constraint-led approach per se? Do you use another concept to create your games?
Yeah. So I'm not great in the differential learning space. I'm trying to learn more in that space. It's actually a weakness of mine. And part of it is I think that I struggle with differential learning and specificity. Like I'm struggling in that space, and time, right? Time is this other thing for me where I probably would be more comfortable exploring it if my team didn't play until the spring, you know. But because of our talent,
there's another reason to coach beach volleyball.
Yeah, well, then I'd have to be better at it because I'm terrible. I'm terrible at it.
You can spend some time with us here. John is really good.
Yeah, I need to get out there. I need to get out there with you guys and spend some time because I think John is phenomenal in the learning space and differential learning and things. So that's on my to-do list. But you know, my sand practice was where, hey, if you win, you go that way. If you lose, you go that way. And spend more time up there, you're probably good. Less time down there, you're probably not good. And that's how we picked our teams. So, but I'm not great in that differential learning space, and I would like to get a little bit better in that. But so practice starts for us tomorrow, and we're gonna play. Like we're gonna play, and our practice flow, if you will, is you know, they lift before the practice, so there's that micro dosing of lifting. So they lift. I like that because they can get together and they're warm when they come in. You know, I'm not a big dynamic warm-up guy, you know. I get it, but I don't get it, you know. And so they lift, come in, hey, we'll meet at the whiteboard. Here's the goal, like here's the focus, right? We'll have a quote. But here's the focus. This is what we're trying to do. This is why we're running this practice. This is what we're focusing on in this practice. You can have your own individual focus as an athlete, but collectively, this is what we're focusing on. So we'll share that with them. And then we'll go into a doubles ladder. Like the one thing I did learn from coaching Sand is just how wonderful doubles is in creating opportunities for this perception action coupling, right? Like if we're playing doubles and you're blocking, well, then I got to dig it, you know, and so my eyes have got to be really good to be able to go do that. And I think this doubles ladder that we do, and we do it every day, is the single most competitive drill that we have, because everyone wants to be at the top of the ladder. No one wants to be at the bottom of the ladder, right? No one wants to be on court 4. Everyone wants to be on court 1. And so they've got to be good at a lot of things in that space. And so middles of passing, middles of setting, you know, libs of hitting. It's just a really, really good space. So we do that. Then we'll go into a little bit of systems work tomorrow, where we feel like we've got to at least define our defensive system, what it is that we want to do, and what is the I sequence. And part of that, I think, is to try and get some common language in place really early, so that once that language is in place, and that language, or keys, you know, you could say, then you can start talking about those things, and everybody knows what you're talking about. So we're going to do that. And then we're going to go play some sixes. And when I say sixes, I don't mean we're just going to play rally scores to 25, right? It's a series of wash and multiple ball entry kind of things. And so then we're going to do that. We don't have any constraints on that, mainly because we're going to do that tomorrow, and we're going to do it again on Friday, because we just want to get a sense of where we're at. We're really reluctant to go into practice assuming that we're not good at something, or assuming that we are good at something. We would much rather get 2 days of data and observation under our belt, and then start plotting a course on, hey, we should probably spend more time in this, and maybe we're okay at this, and we can kind of push that a little bit further. And so, and certainly we aren't at the stage where it's like, hey, we've got to get this installed by this date and that installed by that date. And I don't think learning works that way, right? It doesn't work according to the calendar or a due date, you know, and it's just always evolving. So that's practice for me. And then I think Saturday we'll probably start getting into some constrained things, where maybe it'll probably be a serve thing where, hey, setters, we want you to kind of get into scene 3 and drop some things short and long, and that type of stuff before we start kind of getting into some blocking things and some offensive things for our setter. We'll put some guardrails around offense in terms of what we're trying to defend while we're putting this defensive system in place, you know. But yeah, so that's where we'll go. And then once we've got some answers to some questions, then I think some of those constraints that we want to get in place and how we're going to do it, those will just kind of fan out from that.
Very good. And just one question about this data collection. Do you guys collect data individually, or as a team, or systems, or chains? How do you reference your data collection?
Yeah, so we're for lack of a better term, we're always collecting the binary, right? The outcome-based stuff, you know, kills, errors, pass, and things like that. We're looking at that, looking at setter-hitter relationship. We're trying to put some subjective evaluations on some things, especially when we're talking about set location and tempo window. Window's a big thing for us here, where we're looking at an X, Y, and Z plane, you know, like X being, you know, how, you know, here's this ideal window, you know, is it inside, is it wide, is it whatever thing, and that's X. Y is, hey, is it too low, is it too high, is it just right? And then Z being, hey, is it too tight, too far off, or is it perfect, right? And we kind of want this perfect combination, right, of all three meeting and converging at the same place. And when it does converge in that same place, we know that hitting efficiency is optimal place for that type of thing. So that's for our setters, and then we're looking at our hitters too, like, hey, what is the quality of your approach? Did you transition or not? And then when you did you get it in your specific window, right? Being at the optimal place that you want to hit it, right? Hands is high and above your head a little bit, but did you reach for it? Is it outside your window? Is it this? And then we can get into some conversations about, hey, and the conversations are simply this: hey, if the set's in the window and the hitter's in the window, then just go crush it, right? And if you make an error in that phase, then we're okay with it. You know what I mean? Like, we're okay with it. It's an error, right? It happens. But if the set's not in your window and you're not in your window, then you've got to do something where you maintain an advantage. Don't make errors in that phase, right? And so we have to define what it is to keep the advantage, right? Hey, get the off blocker on their belly, give it to the setter. Can you wipe it? Can you throw it? Can you maybe recycle it a little bit? I mean, that's a good skill. And so we're measuring that, the frequency in which that's happening, the result of which that's happening. So then we can kind of pull out some pretty specific clips for them and show them, like, hey, here's this thing that you recycled. Maybe we covered it, maybe we didn't cover it, but that doesn't mean it wasn't a good choice, right? And so that's where we're spending our time. More so now, I think I'm spending my time in there rather than worrying about hitting efficiency and things like that. I'm trying to spend more time looking at what we need to do better to get to that hitting efficiency rather than just, hey, you hit 280, therefore you're good, right? And that's good, but okay, how do I get you to be 300, right? How do I get you to be 320? Like, hey, if you would just step close a little bit more into this, right? Or, hey, that ball that you tried to recycle but you missed, that's fine, right? And if you had got it, then this would have been happening. So that's taken up a bit of our time, but
oh yeah, but it's a very, very good approach, like more on the qualitative side than the numbers, just the cold numbers. It's more a teaching process than anything, right?
Well, and part of it now, with that kind of layer of information, it allows us to then really dial in on what kind of constraints that we want to be able to provide in practice, and that's helpful, right? That's really helpful. So those constraints can be pretty specific on some things. So, like, hey, we got to get, I don't want my setter to set poorly, right? And I actually don't want my lib to set poorly too, for that matter, right? And so I see that at times, right, where we're like, hey, we've got to get better at hitting out a system, so we have the lib set, and I'm like, well, why does that matter, right? Like the lib's job is to put you in system, right, and not to keep you out of system, sort of thing. So every now and again, I got to bring them out, right? And I got to, we're going to be out of system off my hands. And so just creating some of those constraints in that space based upon some of this data that we're collecting.
And you do some observation learning with them, with those hand of yours, right?
Yeah, every now and again I throw something up, right? And I'm like, "Ooh, man."
Just to keep them honest.
There's like a level of beauty, right? There's the Sistine Chapel, and then there's that set that I just gave you. It's slightly
awesome.
And so you better kill that ball, right?
Right. Yeah.
So,
incredible.
They laugh at me, justifiably so, I think. They laugh at me when I say that.
Yeah, but they laugh, but they know it's true.
It's not quite as good as it once was. Yeah.
Oh, very good, very good. Peter.
Very nice. So, Jason, like I said before, I have a youth volleyball bias, and you gave us a hint of what you would do if you were working with the kids. But let's go back to that. So, what are your thoughts on how coaches can introduce the sport for children in terms of methodology? You gave us a little bit of that. In other words, like the constraint-led approach, the ecological dynamics. It's all based on exploring the game, and developing a relationship between player, environment, task. And we coaches, we modulate restrictions with design environments that are explorable at practice. That's what we want the athletes to to find out and explore and discover themselves. But at this, how can coaches help children that have little to no experience in the sport, with poor attractors, so to speak, in the fundamentals? They never played the sport before, or they're just starting. How can we get the best out of those kids in a practice that is based on, experimentation and exploration? What would you recommend?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that come to mind. One would be to find some film and show them, but you've got to be careful there, right? Like, you're not going to show a 9-year-old that's never played the game the Olympic team, right? Because they just can't even fathom how that could happen. But if you can find some film of, I don't know, 10-year-olds playing, right, that hey, look at what they're doing, right, and can you go mirror that sort of thing? So that you need to find some developmentally appropriate film, right, that they can go and hey, go copy them, right? Well, hey, what do you see there? Go copy them, right? Go copy them with that sort of thing. But then I also think, one of the things, give them the problem to solve too. Like, hey, this ball's coming from me and I need it to go there. Like, that's our problem, right? Hey, let's figure out how to solve that, right? And now you're letting them, this idea, like, I love this idea of exploring that you said, these explorable, activities that allow them, and then go allow them to explore that. And then along the way, right, then we can probably introduce some concepts that hey, oh, that was your solution. And maybe their solution may be better than yours too.
Right.
There's always that thing, hey, wow, that's really good.
That's how innovation is born, right?
Like, yeah, and but then, maybe they're never facing the ball, right? And you've got to put some guardrails around that, and so that's what you're doing as they're exploring, right? You want to keep the river in the banks a little bit, right? But it's not a little narrow river, right? Let's make the river a little wide so they can go think, but we certainly don't want to flood, right? And so we're going to guide them down this river, but it's not a tiny little stream. It's this big river that allows them to go explore. But yeah, present the problem, like, hey, this ball's got to go over the net. Like, how are we going to do that, right? And let them explore that a little bit, and then maybe, hey, let's get them within the river here a little bit, but make sure the stream's going in the right way, right? Like,
right.
But yeah, and then have some fun with it. That's the thing. Like, have some fun with it, and maybe we don't serve right away, but maybe it's we're going to toss it for them, and we're going to lower the net. Like, just lower the net, right? Lower the net, make the court smaller. Yes. And then go after it. Like, there's no rule that says the net has to be this height when you're 9. Maybe there is, but in your practice there isn't. So just lower the dang thing, make the court smaller. Like, make the court smaller than the sand court. Like, just make it really small, and then let them go, right? Because that's what you mentioned it earlier, right? The contacts, right? You want to get them a number of contacts on the ball, and you want to get those going within context, right? Context and content, and so but yeah, lower the net, and shorten the court, and if they do have a serve and they miss it, then just go ball one in, so that we keep it going, right? And so that's what I would make it as fun as we can, and I don't know, put scores to it, right? Like let them go keep score, and yeah, I think there's lots. That's where I would start a little bit, but developmentally appropriate video, so they can give them a demonstration of what it's supposed to look like, and then let them go explore that space as best they can, on a smaller, lowered net court, and go crush it. Yeah. Everybody starts with passing, right? Maybe start with hitting, maybe.
I love starting with hitting.
Love
right?
it.
Like, everyone starts with passing, but maybe start with hitting, because that's the fun part of the game. And
that's how you score the most.
Yeah. And so if that's what you're going to do, then just lower the net here a little bit.
Right.
and off we go. I mean, I think we've done a pretty good job in like different weighted volleyballs that kids can play with, and so that's always good, and I don't know, if you're young kids, right, just get a balloon out there and let them go with the balloon or something, because time is the problem, right? Time, that's one of the things that you can kind of constrain a little bit with the balloon, right? Is that you now have created more time for them, right? Rather than a normal volleyball is, it's going to come down pretty fast and stuff. So, and certainly that would help, right? That would help. I mean, even on those super soft touch balls, slow the game down a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
You just put in volleyball terms what is the definition of proximal developmental zone. So everybody that studies, physical education and pedagogy, we know that we lead our students and our athletes. Where are they right now in terms of skill and knowledge of the game, how much they know, and what do I have to offer as a coach and guide them in a discovery. So they're going to discover the game with a little help from my friends.
Yeah.
And how do we create this environment, right? How do we create these opportunities, these, like you said, these affordances, so that our kids can explore and feel motivated and, I think I can do that, instead of like, that is too much for me, I can't do that, I'll never be able to do that.
Yeah.
So what is very interesting to me is show some video, some footage of the next age group. Oh, this is what we're looking for, what we're looking toward, for you to play next year. So what do we have to do right now for you to get there?
Yeah.
And that's something that's palpable. It's right there. And you said fun, the word fun, like 2 or 3 or 4 times there. To me, that is key. And in my experience, having the kids on the first day of practice, the 9 and 10-year-olds that we have here, they play with balloons, and the game is how many balls how many balloons can you make it touch the ground on the other side of the net, over the net, and that's it. And for the next week or 2, that's all they want to do.
Yeah, I remember
awesome.
my kids were young. They would play soccer, football for you, and like they would play soccer, and it's no fault of the coaches, right? I get it. I mean, they're, it's it's the, hey, if no one's going to coach them, I'll coach them kind of thing, and so that poor person, right, has no coaching education, and so they're trying, and so they got cones out, they got all these kinds of things going, and then finally they get to play, right? That's the traditional model, and they get to matches, right? And it just be this clump of kids, and then one strong kid will kick it, and then that'll all go clump and everything like that,
right?
and hey, what's fun about this? And be like, well, the Capri Sun, right, is the fun thing that happens after the snack that you get after the game was the fun thing, right? And so maybe you got to do that, right? Maybe you got to have snacks too, and the end of practice, to make it fun. But I hope there's some joy in just playing volleyball at times,
Right. We are very good as coaches in killing the joy for the kids, right? I used to do that when I was, younger as a coach in the beginning of my career. You have to earn the game, right?
Yeah.
And that to me, that has changed. It's the opposite now. Like we offer you the game so that you fall in love with the game. Now you want to learn more. You want to know how can you be better at playing the game. So,
yeah, and I don't think those coaches are intentionally destroying people's joy, right?
Correct. No, never. If you are intentional in destroying the fun, but you're not in the right work, right? In the right profession. No, but yeah, I agree with you.
Cool. Jason, we don't want to get too much of your time. We know that this week is very, very important for you. But before you go, we have 2 things to ask you. But first of all, we're trying to make this project happen in Portuguese and in English. So one thing that we ask our guests here is to recommend 2 names for us to interview them. So can you please recommend 2 people for us to reach out and have a chat like this?
Yeah, so Yeah, I think he's brilliant in spaces that I'm not. I'm learning an enormous amount from him, and it's a strange relationship actually, in that we're both in the same conference, and so and Tom Black, who was at LMU, is somebody that I just have the utmost respect for. I think he's doing a phenomenal job in Georgia. Like, I really do. I think he's great.
Amazing.
The other person that I think it would be really beneficial is Sharon Windsor, who is the head women's coach at Canada.
Canada national team, yeah.
She spent some time in Australia, but she's up there doing a phenomenal job. And they just barely missed qualifying for the Olympics. And I mean, she's one of the few female head coaches at the international level, right? There aren't very many, and she's one of them. And she's had to navigate that space. I would be curious, her thoughts on, like, how does that work?
Yeah, for sure.
And then how to follow that path, right? How to follow that path, as we're looking at, hey, let's get a wide range of coaches coaching this sport, that is a little bit more representative of the people who are playing it, Perfect. And so I think she would be wonderful too. I don't know if you can get him, but Kyle Stark is a guy I've spent some. He's a performance guy. He's a mental performance guy. He's worked with Tom. He's worked with me a little bit. I think he's been on the Coach Your Brains Out podcast.
Well, I think I know the host. Maybe.
Yeah, there could be. So you may be able to help there.
Yeah, you might have seen him around.
Awesome.
But I think those and I think at the end of the Love season, it'd be interesting to get some of those coaches on and see how that space has gone. Suze is up in Omaha, and Tama is in Salt Lake, and it'd be interesting to see their take on that. That would be fascinating. I know you're busy at the end of the spring, with sand and stuff, and winning national championships at LMU, which I certainly am excited to see how that develops over the years now. But yeah, those would be interesting conversations for me, like, as a listener.
Awesome. The great names. We're definitely going to reach out to all of them. And our last thing here that we want you to share with us, we have a lot of especially volleyball coaches here that listen to us, especially Brazilian coaches. But we also have athletes, we have former athletes, we have enthusiasts of the sport, people that love volleyball, love coaching in other sports. So just leave a message to all these people, something that you think it's important to share.
Well, to your listeners in Brazil, I apologize for my Portuguese.
Yeah, we agreed that we were going to do this episode in Portuguese, but it's all right. You can come back another time and do one in Portuguese.
One of the three of us failed miserably in their ability to learn conversational Portuguese. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to answer that question, but other than just as a reminder, right, that we're coaching people, and people are incredibly complex, and because of that, we probably need to spend a little bit more time being empathetic about where they're at, and as coaches, maybe spend some time meeting them where they're at in the space that they're at. And our goal is not to be their friend. We're coaches. They have enough friends, but we can be friendly, and we can be compassionate, and we can be empathetic. No one's making an error because they like making errors. They're making errors because learning is messy, right? Learning is messy, and you've got to create an environment where they're comfortable being messy. And you can do that, I think, by being patient, empathetic, and compassionate about where they're at. And I tell my athletes here at Arkansas, I want to be the most patient coach you've ever had in your life. And I don't know if that's true. I don't know how we measure it, right? I don't know, but but certainly that's my goal, and that takes considerable work on my part. I've got to be better in that space for them. But that's what I would say, right? That I've never done anything other than a coach, so I don't know any other profession, right? And I think lots of professions, if you want to be great at them, are really hard, and I think coaching is one of those, right? If you want to be good at it, it's really, really hard. If you want to be bad at it, it's really easy, like it's just really easy,
Definitely.
right? Just, but yeah, like respect the athlete, and respect the learning process that the athlete's going through, and then I think you can get some pretty healthy returns in your gym.
It's amazing. Incredible. It's so awesome that we had other big time coaches here in our podcast, and most of them said the same things in different ways, different words, and different languages, but all of them have this message. And you, coach, that are listening to us, you have to know that volleyball is way more than volleyball. Coaching volleyball is way more than understanding about technique, tactics, the statistics, and learning about people is probably more important, and it's the first step that you have to take. Jason, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I was blown away that first you accepted our invitation, and this episode is definitely one of the best that we've ever done here on our short history, but it was amazing. Thank you so much. I have such a strong respect for you, such a strong admiration since the first time I met you in that coaching clinic in 2009. When I got to Nebraska, G was talking about you all the time, and more and more my admiration grows about you. So thank you so much.
You guys are good people doing good work, and I wish you all the best with this podcast, and look, if you have questions, if anyone listening has questions, or if they're like, hey, there's no way in the world what you do is even remotely possible or makes any sense whatsoever, hey, have them reach out to me. I'd love to engage in that space, but yeah, good luck to you guys, and thanks for including me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Brazilians are very touchy people, and one day when I'm close to you, I'm gonna ask, can I give you a hug? Because because we
hugs are no.
Okay. Can I shake your hand?
Yeah, we can do that. We can do that.
Okay, great. That will be my hug to you. I'm gonna shake your hand.
There's both countries wear green and gold, right?
Right.
Brazil and Australia, but maybe the similarities end right there with
there. So I'll give you a strong handshake then.
Yeah, there you go.
So you probably have no idea how much your work is influencing a lot of coaches out there, and I just want to thank you for being available to share what you do on a daily basis with your teams, and your thought process that helps us a lot. So thank you for giving us your time. Thank you very much. Wishing you a great season, another great season, even better, each time better and better and better. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Jason.
Appreciate it. Cheers, you guys.
Cool. All right, guys. Thank you so much for following us until this point. Click your like, share this episode. Thank you so much for staying with us here.
And like I always say, come back to check the next one, everybody. See you later.
Right on. Thanks, guys. See you in the next one.